Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Faith Revival. So last time we talked about the two most dangerous threats to your iman, the love of wealth and the love of fame, like two hungry wolves being let loose on a flock of sheep. But this is a really interesting hadith that the Prophet ﷺ gives us. He says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and some of the scholars say this is actually a saying of Umar radiallahu anhu, but there are certainly many narrations, that poverty may lead to disbelief, that poverty almost leads to disbelief. Al-faqr, which is poverty, can lead a person down to disbelief. And Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, not only did he say it, Umar radiallahu anhu said, if poverty was a man, then I would have choked him with my own two hands. So poverty is a difficult test to a person's iman, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he recognizes that. And this narration comes in various formats. One of them we learn from the Prophet ﷺ that he used to seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after every salah, according to some narrations. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-kufri wal-faqr. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from disbelief and poverty. And in one of the narrations in Ibn Hibban, he was asked sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about why he always uses those together, disbelief and poverty together, and he said they're the same. Subhanallah, like they are equal. Not that poverty is equal to kufr, because poverty is not something that a person chooses most of the time, but it's something that's inflicted on a person, whereas kufr is deliberate, disbelief is deliberate. But that a person could be led down to that path where they start to have questions about faith, or they start to do things that would harm their faith. He mentioned sallallahu alaihi wasallam in one narration, there was a man that heard the Prophet ﷺ always seeking refuge in Allah from debt. And in this narration by Aisha radiallahu anha, as he's always seeking refuge in Allah from debt, the man said, how often you seek refuge in Allah from debt? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when a man gets into debt, he speaks and he tells lies, he makes promises and he breaks them. Meaning sometimes a person might have to resort to unethical behavior. And we see there's a direct correlation in many parts of the world, and of course even here in the United States, between poverty and crime. So poverty can lead someone who never would have thought of doing criminal behavior to criminal behavior, right? Because it's a condition where people start to resort to certain things. And the Prophet ﷺ recognizes that. And eventually that criminal behavior could lead to a sense of disbelief. So he's teaching us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about the harms of poverty. So what do we learn from this? Number one, is the Prophet ﷺ blaming the person who's in poverty? No. Self-inflicted poverty is not something that we seek in Islam. And I know that should sound like common sense, but in Islam, a person does not inflict poverty as a means of asceticism on themselves, which is actually a trait in many different philosophies and religions, that a person should force themselves into difficult situations so that they can spiritually elevate themselves. And this is a concept that does not exist in our faith. However, if a person is forced into poverty, then the majority of the people of Jannah are fuqara and masakin, are people who are poor and people who were in poverty. Why? Because wealth takes more people away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than poverty. So we don't have a philosophy of self-inflicted poverty in our religion. Number two, the Prophet ﷺ taught us to seek refuge in Allah. So a person should frequently seek refuge in Allah. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-kufri wal-faqr. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from disbelief and poverty. And in one narration, the Prophet ﷺ says, وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ عَذَابِ الْقَبْرِ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ. And I seek refuge in you from the torment of the grave. So seek refuge in Allah from it. Number three, the Prophet ﷺ put the burden on society, not those that are in poverty. Society has a job, a responsibility to eradicate poverty. Now, this is a very powerful connection if you can make that connection. The same passion that we have in eradicating kufr, if you will, eradicating disbelief and teaching people about Allah and doing da'wah, if you equate poverty and disbelief, we should have that passion to also eradicating poverty from a society. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, the believer, no one of you believes and sleeps at night while his neighbor is hungry. Right? That is a weakness in iman in the person, that if he allows people to suffer in poverty while he himself eats to his fill, that's a weakness in his iman. So the Prophet ﷺ puts a burden on society. If you want to guard iman and faith in a society, you need to fight poverty so that people do not find themselves in that situation. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala First and foremost, to protect us from disbelief and poverty. Secondly, to use us to eradicate poverty, inshallah ta'ala, to use us to alleviate people that are in that situation, and to make us, in that sense, agents of Iman, people that preserve faith in a society. Allahumma ameen. Jazakumullahu khairan. See you all next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.